Hi, this is Lainey Cameron. I am here with Anita Kushwaha, whose novel Secret Lives of Mothers and Daughters came out earlier this year to great acclaim. It's had some beautiful reviews, and I know I gave it a 5-star rating. It's a poignant, beautiful. Actually, I'll tell you that the most common word in your reviews is beautiful writing. I don't know if you knew that.
It's really sweet. Yeah, it always means so much when people have that reaction to it.
And so let's talk about this book that's getting such great reception. Where did the idea come from? And maybe talk a little bit about the story. It's a multi-generational story. Tell us a little bit about how did you come up with this?
Yeah, so it's so funny. When you sent me the questions, I've gotten that question so many times before, but it occurred to me yesterday that the real starting point was actually grief. I was in my early 30s at the time, experiencing grief for the first time, really, and kind of having trouble navigating it, getting back to life. And that sort of led me to writing about it because I guess that's how I've always sort of dealt with things in my life, kind of turned to writing. And I just created this character, Mala, who was in a similar situation, dealing with grief, trying to manage it, and kind of having some struggles along the way. And the story kind of unfolded from there. So we have her story in one timeline, and we have Asha, who is our younger protagonist, in a different timeline. And essentially, their two storylines intertwined together throughout the book, and you see how their lives are connected.
And I thought it was really clever how you did that, right? It's like multiple timelines and multiple storylines, and yet it's all connected. And it reminded me a little bit of like Love Actually, or one of those movies where you don't know until later what the connection is. And you're spending the book trying to understand exactly how all of the people are connected.
Yeah, that was one of the challenges, was trying to keep each storyline interesting enough that people would be, interested in the separate characters and keep following along. So hopefully it worked.
I think it worked wonderfully. And let's take a quick peek at a review. This is from Samantha Bailey, who wrote Woman on the Edge, another great new novel that came out this year. And I thought she captured it really well. A stunning, gorgeously written, intergenerational tale, 3 very different mothers, each harboring their own secrets, a layered, emotional, powerful story. It's a book I savored through every word. I could not have said that better. Doesn't she say it lovely?
Yeah, she's wonderful. Sam's a good friend of mine, and she's been so supportive through this whole process. I'm really happy with all the acclaim that she's experiencing right now with her book, Woman on the Edge.
Fellow Canadian, right? Where are you joining us from?
So I'm from Ottawa, which is about 4 hours away from Sam, maybe more like 5 hours away from Sam. We both live in the same province, but she's in Toronto and I'm in Ottawa. Yeah. So snowy Ottawa as of today.
Oh, well, that's good. It's right in time for the holiday season.
Yeah, exactly. It feels very Christmassy around here right now.
So how did this novel change? One of the things we all learn, I think, as writers is over the editing phases, iterations, books change, right? Things get cut, they get added in, characters change. Like, what might a reader be interested to know is different from the original version of the book?
Yeah, so it's funny, but before I even signed with Harper, I was at that point looking for an agent. So one of the biggest changes was initially the book was completely linear, but I had been submitting to different agents, and one asked me to do a resubmission, and she suggested trying 2 timelines. At the time, I thought, well, that's such a major change. I'm not sure if I can do that. It felt really daunting at the time, but it's made the book what it is today. So I'm always really grateful to that agent, even though I didn't sign with her ultimately. It was a really great suggestion. So the whole structure changed. And then once I signed with Harper, the thing that got cut the most was extra characters. There's at least 4 characters that come to mind that didn't make it to the final version. So a lot of people got the axe.
I can believe that. And one of the things I loved about this book is it's steeped in Indian traditions, right? Canadian, Indian, it goes back and forth. You've got generations that have come, first generation from India. How did you decide like what to explain and what not to explain, or what to include and what not to include there?
Yeah, so I tend to write through a cultural lens. There's a few lenses I write through. One's a feminist lens, one's a cultural lens. And basically, I think when I was writing, when I was younger, I would write from the perspective of trying to explain my culture to other people. And I've kind of realized that that wasn't kind of the audience that I wanted to choose. So I just write it from the perspective of someone who knows already a little bit about my background. And if they don't, then maybe that's a little bit of encouragement to seek it out. There's always things that we don't know when we're reading books. So really, I just tried to focus on the elements that were most relevant to the things I was trying to talk about. So essentially, how cultural expectations can get in the way of us living authentically, and what the costs of that are to our relationships, to our identity, and of course to our mental health, which is also something that I write a lot about in my fiction.
I thought it worked really well. I know I felt immersed when I was reading the book. I felt like I was getting insight and understanding a culture that obviously I'm never going to be Canadian Indian and not have that background, but I really felt immersed and like I was part of that story. So you did it really well.
Well, thank you. I'm again, that's reassuring to hear.
So what about writing? You were just saying, right? You kind of changed how you thought about how you get culture into it. You didn't have to explain it in the way maybe you once thought you did. And I know I went through something similar where I thought I actually went the other way. I thought I didn't need to explain things, and I realized some things in Silicon Valley I actually did need to explain because they weren't obvious to people from outside of that. So what did you have to learn? Like, what advice do you have for writers who might be earlier in their career who are looking at you going, you did it, you got the HarperCollins deal, you got this book into the world. Like, gosh, when you look back and you're helping people a few steps behind, what advice do you give them?
Yeah, it's funny. I had a reading, I guess this was a while ago now. Readings all happened a while ago, but there was a young woman who came up to me and she had asked, how do you put yourself out there? How do you tell the stories you want to tell? And she asked, does the fear ever go away? And I think she might have been a little disappointed with my answer, but I feel like that's such an important question. I think it's something we all struggle with and learn how to manage. I think that fear can often get in the way of people even starting a manuscript, certainly finishing it, putting yourself out there to find an agent or find a publisher. It's one of those things because I guess the reality is that when you're a writer, you're constantly vulnerable. And once you put yourself out there, you're also opening yourself up to rejection and criticism. And I guess fear is just at the heart of all of that. So I was really honest with her and I said, well, I don't think the fear goes anywhere, especially if you're writing about stories that really matter to you. It's always going to feel personal and vulnerable. But basically, feel the fear, but do it anyway was my advice. And realize that, there are ways that you can manage it. But I think the more tragic thing would be to let that fear hold you back and keep you from, achieving that dream if that's a dream for you. So I kind of digested that and was like, oh, okay, well, darn it, there's never going to be that perfect moment where you feel fully confident. If anything, I don't know if you felt this way, but once your work is out there, it can be really hard on your self-esteem and your confidence. So
Yeah, I have a good friend who studies fear. She's actually an academic who studies fear, and one of the words she hates the most in the world is fearless. She says there's no such thing as fearless, right? Like it's about learning to live with the fear, learning to work with it, learning to understand it, and still move forward. But this concept of fearlessness, she's like, that's such a silly word.
every time I hear fearless, I think, oh, that's just someone who's like really good at lying because as human beings, we're hardwired for fear. It's always going to be part of us. But yeah, just that finding ways to manage it, getting a really good writer support group and just doing it, not being afraid of failure and just going for it.
So, Anita, what have you enjoyed reading recently?
Well, just like you, I probably have so many on my TBR and I'm catching up and it just feels like I can never get to the top of that pile. But so I wrote some down also because I have pregnancy brain and I forget everything. But so I was reading the last story of Mina Lee. I was really enjoying that. But then my friend Lynn Liao Butler sent me an arc of her book, The Tiger Mom's Tale. So I'm reading that at the moment, and it's really brilliant. I'm about 80% finished, so I'm so
I have it.
excited.
I'm so excited to start it.
Oh, right. It's so good. It's so good. Yeah. So Kate had it too, and she said she was reading it, and then I was like, no, I need to read it. So I dropped the other book. I'll get back to that one, but I'm really enjoying that. Before that, I had read How to Fail at Flirting by Denise Williams, and it's such a great contemporary romance. What I really love is that this year I've read a lot more contemporary romance than I have before, and they tackle some really serious issues. And Denise definitely tackles a lot of tough issues in her book. But it's just, yeah, it's brilliant, and it came out recently, and it's already doing so well. That was
Great.
another one. And before that, I was reading an arc of A Pairing to Die For, which is Kate Lansing's book 2. Also, just totally enjoyable. I really love Kate's writing, and I was eagerly awaiting book 2 because I loved book 1 so much. And before that, I read Nowhere Near Goodbye by Barbara Conray. So beautiful. I love that book. It was just a really touching look at motherhood and family life and grief and loss. And to be reading it while pregnant as well, it was really affecting. So I recommend that. It's probably one of my favorite books from this year. Yeah. So, anyways, those are a few little reads that I've read recently, and there's lots more I still need to get through. But
It's an awesome list. In fact, I've read and endured all of those myself. So great choices. And let's look at how folks can connect with you if they want to connect with you, for example, on Instagram. Here's your Instagram account. You're Ms. Anita Kushwaha on Instagram, and your website is anitakushwaha.com.
yes.
And do you enjoy folks reaching out to you after they've read the book? Do you enjoy getting emails, that kind of thing?
I do. I really love it. So I have a Facebook. I'm really not on Facebook very much. So that's probably not the best way to reach me. But I'm on Twitter and I'm on Instagram, and my handles are the same for both. And it actually means so much when people reach out and just let you know, oh, I just finished the book and it made me think about this and that. I love it. And yeah, I feel like most weeks somebody reaches out and sends me a little note, and it's probably the thing that keeps you going as an author, because there's like really busy periods of being an author, and then there's like dry spells where things aren't happening so much. But one of those little letters can be such a pick me up, and just to know that I guess we write because we want to connect with others and share our work and know that it's touched someone else's heart and mind. And to hear that feedback is really wonderful, because sometimes it does feel like you're shouting out into the void and you're not really sure if there's anybody there.
Especially on Twitter for me, I'm like, okay, nobody's seeing this.
Oh, I know, it's true. Yeah.
Well, this has been lovely. Is there anything I didn't ask you that you wanted to make sure you said before we wrap up?
I think that was everything. I just want to thank you, Lainey, for everything you do for everyone. You're really supportive, and I'm so glad we actually got to meet face to face finally.
Well, it's been so lovely to talk with you, Anita.
It's been great chatting with you too. Take care.